Guys, today's story comes from one of my favorite YouTube channels. It's the Millionaire Morning Show with Anton Daniels. Yes, it's another Anton Daniels show. So he has multiple channels. They all have super interesting content and comments. And so that's why I wanted to share this story with you. Guys, take a look at this kid. His name is Elijah Mackey. He works at a Checkers fast food restaurant in Kissimmee, Florida. Now, he's only 23 years old, but if you notice his body, he's still very much high school skinny. He looks kind of closer to a 17 or 18-year-old, in my opinion. And one of his coworkers had a disagreement with a customer in line. The customer basically wanted some extra mayo or something like that. And she was arguing with him to the point where the customer said, "Let me talk to your manager." Elijah Mackey does not choose to exit the front door of the restaurant. Instead, he jumps out the front window of the restaurant and proceeds to walk over to the side of the building, and he confronts the man. The man decides to say some derogatory statements towards Elijah, and then Elijah goes ahead and he pulls out a small pistol from his waistline and shoots the man in the chest. Now, there's a lot of crazy things here in play. Number one, apparently this area in Florida is really close to like Disney World, Universal Studios, etc., etc. So it's really a tourist location. I don't know if this man was a local or if he was a tourist, but these are places where a lot of people are going and they're not expecting to encounter gunshots, right? So it freaked everybody out. Everybody's running around, but then we get to the meat and potatoes of this. Number one, why is Elijah bringing a gun to work when he's working at a Checkers fast food joint? Number two, why is Elijah so concerned with an argument involving, of all things, condiments? This was over a couple packets of mayo. The guy wanted to speak to the manager, which, by the way, I'd be willing to bet that that request happens tens of thousands of times a day in this country, maybe even in each state. And then for you to have absolutely nothing to do with this transaction, and you actually leap out the front window again, why can't you just calmly exit out the door? And then he was basically, and this is what Anton brought up, and this is why I love listening to Anton's commentary, he basically started thinking in his mind, and he said, I know exactly what this is, and I think Anton's right. Tell me what you think. I think what happened is Elijah probably had a crush on the girl, and he wanted to play the role of the man, so to speak. And so he was kind of doing some white knighting, right? He wants to stand up for this girl, so he's going to go do it and show the man who the real boss is, so to speak. And now because of that, he's been charged with first-degree unaliving. There's that magical YouTube word, first-degree unaliving, guys. And now in Florida, apparently, if you're found guilty of this, it's basically a life or death sentence in Florida. No chance of parole. Here's my thinking. That's how it should be in every state. Don't let people that eliminate people, don't let them out on the streets. In my opinion, they've lost that right. But here, hand the guy a couple packets of mayo, hand him a couple extra napkins, no big deal. Live another day. We live in this really super energized world where for some reason people just can't leave well enough alone. They have to have the last word. They have to show somebody else that they're bigger and badder than the other guy. And if you look at this guy, he kind of looks like Steve Urkel did back in the day. He's probably not going to handle prison all that well. The funny thing Anton said at the end, and I don't think it's funny at all because it's probably true, is that now instead of trying to be bold for a woman, he's probably going to end up being some older man's boyfriend in the joint. Just kind of makes you wonder. When I was younger, one of the things that kept me on the straight and narrow, and maybe guys listening to my voice, maybe you can let me know if this affected you as well. I watched movies like American Me. I watched shows on HBO like Oz. The last thing I wanted to do when I was in my 20s was go off to prison and have to potentially sell up with some perverted older guy. That's what gets me about today's youth. Why the heck would you want to do anything that could jeopardize your freedom and your future and put you in a situation where you have to live with the meanest, cruelest, toughest people on the planet? I just don't see any benefit to that. So what kept me on the straight and narrow? I did not want to go in there and have to sell up with Bubba. I'm assuming there's a couple of other guys listening that felt the same way. And ladies, from what I understand, female prisons are very dominant action as well. Would you really want to sell up with a woman that was all of a sudden going to declare you her girlfriend? I don't think you guys would like that either. So if you want to know the difference between me and I guess other guys in their 20s, is apparently they're okay with shacking up with older men in an intimate setting. I didn't want anything to do with that. Here's the crazy thing. Right after that happens, he returns to the store, I believe they said just to pick up his jacket. And then the cops ended up catching him. He was hiding in a stairwell. Now that's what gets me. Right before you pull the gun out of your waistband, why don't you envision yourself, Elijah? Why don't you envision yourself, setting your gun down as the cops take you in? Why is it so hard for young men in this country to envision the worst and catch themselves before they jump off that cliff? I guess that's the weird thing about me. I can never imagine ending a person's life, let alone because they wanted to talk to my manager. I mean, even if you were to get fired, it's a checker job. You go down the street and you get a job at Wendy's. You move on and you live another day. My ass has been a virgin since 1976, and my ass is gonna stay that way, if you know what I mean. Guys, let's talk about etiquette at fast food lines and drive-thrus, because one of the things that I think people forget when they're angry, because I'm sure this guy was a little rude too, right? One of the things that we forget is that you're at the mercy of the people in that building doing stuff to your food. And even though we get grossed out because we think they might be spitting a loogie into our burger, there are a lot worse things they can put than a booger, right? Could you imagine if somebody put a splash of bleach in your food or something that could really do some damage? So this is the little tips that I kind of came up with right now. Do not argue or curse. If you argue, you don't know how they're going to take it on the other side of that microphone. I remember when I was married, my wife would say the stupidest things to those people, and it's like, they're about to hand us our food. Are you really that dense? I mean, that used to really upset me, because my thinking is, don't get pissed off over a ketchup bag. I think that's what my wife would get mad at. The last time I was here, I didn't get my ketchup, and I'm sick of it. Can't you guys do your own job? It's like, okay, you just invited them to spit in all of our food, and more than likely they're gonna spit in one burger, and it's gonna be the one that I eat. Can you be quiet? Listen for clues. Guys laughing. If I ever go through a drive-through line, and all of a sudden I hear people playing around in the inside, like, you know how sometimes you can hear the microphone in the background? If I hear it, what sounds like young guys just joking and laughing, sometimes it turns me off, because I imagine them laughing about a burger falling on the ground and them wrapping it up and giving it to the next customer. So again, if you hear obnoxious behavior and it triggers your gut to say, I don't want to eat here, don't eat there. Visual clues. Did they just return from smoking or a bathroom break? I can't tell you how many times I've gone into a Burger King or a McDonald's and I see somebody come from cleaning up the bathroom and they're touching a mop with their gloved up hands, and then they go right to the fryer to make some food. That grosses me out. I don't know why restaurants do that. I really hate when I see a mop bucket with a mop and they go right from food prep to mopping with that mop. It just grosses me out. And then finally, do they seem all right or argumentative? If the lady doesn't want to give you ketchup without being weird about it, like apparently happened in this scenario, just move on. Just move on. Ken Kenny, 6196, says fatherless behavior. I think that's one of the big things with teenage pregnancy and women in their 20s that are having children for the first time. There are so many mothers that are doing it alone. And it's like, if we could just talk younger couples into staying in couple mode, even till their kids were 5, 6, or 7, rather than, 3 or 4 months. If we could keep these couples together, I just think it would help so much more. There's too many fathers that don't have a relationship with their young sons and daughters. And it's just proven that if your father's not in your life, you're probably going to lose out on some untapped potential that you could have probably done with some guidance from your pops. At Dip 2600 says, this story is wild. You can't even go to get fast food these days without someone just going completely nuts over nothing. It's very unfortunate for everyone involved. Anton, keep doing what you're doing. Are these stories wild? Are these stories crazy? I know I like to say this is a crazy story, or wow, this is crazy, but the reality is it's becoming the norm now. Back when I was growing up, this story would have been crazy, but now it's just like a regular everyday thing, and it happens in every single city, every single night. At Relax With Me 9453 says, I won't even order my food if when I pull up to the drive-thru, the person sounds like they have an attitude, let alone will I argue with them. They can kill you, not just with a gun. There's no reason why they can't put mop water in your food, why they can't spit in your food, why they can't break up some prescription drugs in your food. There's so many things they can do, and you're not safe even when you're nice to them. It would probably be smart for each and every one of us to separate your burger and make sure there's nothing gross in your food. The reason I say that is because I feel like a lot of these people in this country just don't really care about your health and well-being. So you got to take it upon yourself. But one thing you can definitely do is don't argue with them. And if you ever feel like they're off their rocker, don't eat food from them. Otherwise, you'll end up wishing that you hadn't. Patty Souza, 2954, says, why would he take a pistol to work and then take away a man's life over a mayo packet? Is that just unreal? Totally unreal. You figure that something must have been said that this guy heard that just totally rocked his day. Who knows? Maybe it was a white guy in the drive-thru and maybe he dropped a racial slur. I don't know. But he comes out and they're calling it premeditated. And I hope that that doesn't lose the case for the state, because I don't know how this can be premeditated if he didn't know the guy beforehand. So I'm thinking this is probably going to get dropped to second degree unaliving, and it's probably going to be one of those things where he's out on the streets in 10 to 15 years. Now, this happened in Florida, so I don't know how their court system's going to handle it, but every single day we go over stories where judges end up letting these people out right back into the community so they can repeat the process. OG Millie Mills says crashing out over mayo is diabolical. Golly, the things that people crash out over nowadays, they all seem a little overblown. If you lose your job, go find another job. If you lose your boyfriend or girlfriend, well, it wasn't meant to be. Go find another one. When people are single and down to earth and they pay their bills and they go through the ups and downs, they ask themselves, why can't other people do this? You know, we can all do this, right, Venters? If shit happens, you learn to adjust and you move on. I think that's part of being a human. Other animals have to worry about being hunted and they have to worry about being prey, right? to falcons and hawks and lions. That's one of the trade-offs of being humans. You don't have to worry about bears eating you, but you do have to worry about paying your own bills. Bobby Joe Cowpoke says now he goes to prison for life, no bills, no responsibility. That's the style of life they want. I'm retired law enforcement in that area. This is nothing new for these guys. That's really sad. You know, it's one thing if you go to jail when you're in your 50s and at least you had 45 years to kind of mess around and have a life. These kids are going into jail when they're in their early 20s. And I don't know about you, but as a darn near 50-year-old guy, I look at people in their 20s like they're still kids. This guy's going into jail weighing $150. I don't think it's going to work out too well for him. I don't think it's going to work out too well for you either if you don't get off the couch and start walking. God bless it. Make sure you put on your shoes. Make sure you go for a walk today, tomorrow, and the next day. And make sure you hit the subscription button so I can walk with you. Have a good night. I'll see you tomorrow.